Welcome to the Inspiring You Show. If we haven't met, I'm Henry. So, friends, this episode is shaped by something many of us will face, yet few of us may feel prepared to navigate. The moment when a parent begins to need more care than we can provide alone, or may need to go from independent living to 24/7 care. So, the title of the show is A Conversation on Aging Parents, Care, and What Can Support You to Stay Steady. And I'm definitely already having some feels about this because it's currently something I am moving through. So, recently, my elderly mom, who's 89 years old and going to be 90 this year, went into short term care, and it looks like she'll be moving into long term care. So while the logistics have been complex, the emotional landscape has been even more layered at times. And recently, my oldest brother sent my brother and I a photo of my mom's living room, and it's still decorated for Christmas. The remote to the TV was on the couch near the blanket. Then the blanket was crumpled in a way that looked like my mom had just used it and just got up for a minute, and that she was just going to come back at any moment and would be able to snuggle under that blanket and resume watching TV. And so it was a moment all three of us realized that my mom will probably never be coming back to her home again. And even though Christmas has been waiting for her to come back and pack up the holiday items, it won't ever happen. It looks like that at this time. So my mom, just kind of give you some backstory. My mom loves Christmas decorating, and that's the other aspect of it for my siblings and I. It just is that moment where you realize she'll probably never decorate for Christmas again. And so all three of us responded with like, wow, this is sad. And we all saw it at the same time through the photo. And so with elder care, there's the love and the want for your loved one to receive the care they deserve, the tenderness of the time and what it all means, and also the sadness, the grief, also the uncertainty. And then there's also the quiet reorganization inside the heart that may go unnamed as a parent moves into this chapter of life, or even a loved one moves into this chapter of life. And all of this is happening while navigating the complex and often broken systems of the healthcare. Especially, I'm speaking about being in the United States and, the broken systems of healthcare and then elder care. And so I don't personally know what it's like outside of the US, but here in the US, it's broken. And my experience also moving through this has been just the realization of how difficult it is at times to move through it. But it doesn't mean that you still can't show up to advocate and receive help and support. And so this episode is not about having answers, but about talking about tools and how to possibly stay steady through a season that may ask a lot of us emotionally, energetically, and practically. How do we do this? And so I wanted to bring someone into this conversation who understands this path in her own lived way and who carries a deep well of wisdom when it comes to caring for others and caring for ourselves. This person is so incredibly compassionate and is just so wise. And so I'm joined by my dear friend, Ellen Elphand. And Ellen is a clinical herbalist, acupuncturist, practicing in Los Angeles and online, working with patients from pediatrics to geriatrics. And what I love about Ellen's work is how she bridges classical plant wisdom with rigorous scientific methodology, creating individualized herbal prescriptions. Her specialty is internal medicine with a particular focus on supporting individuals affected by environmental toxins. But what makes Ellen so extraordinary, I mean, there's many things that make Ellen extraordinary, but one of the things is the way she brings presence clarity, and real grounded compassion to every person she supports. So, Ellen herself has walked the journey of supporting an aging parent through the transition into long term care. She knows firsthand the emotional, physical, and spiritual terrain of this experience. And so that was also why I wanted to bring her into this. So, Ellen, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm really grateful we get to have this conversation together.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful introduction. And my heart goes out to you. That was really a touching example of what a lot of people experience. And I'm sorry you're going through that.
Thank you, my friend. And, I was there many years ago with you, with your mom. And so that's why, I wanted to have this conversation. But before we get into that, I just want to, we've been wanting to do this for a while. And I just want people to know more about your background and about how herbal medicine can actually help in acupuncture. So, what drew you into herbal medicine and acupuncture? And just talk a little bit more about your work. And then we'll get into talking more about in terms of the care system and things that possibly could help people.
Yeah, okay. I mean, my work is pretty diverse. My focus is herbal medicine, and I would never have known that that would have been my path originally, but here we are. And I just feel like this. Well, what's funny actually is that I've cared for a lot of different people, more than my mother. And what brought me into this medicine was my care for my godmother, my Aunt Cecile Fox. She was in New York and Florida. And I learned a lot about how different states have different rules about care and different things I've been through. I also cared for my cousin. I was her health advocate for 30 years, and she was in Florida. But it was my Aunt Cecile's path of trying to support her health that got me into this medicine, which is really an amazing experience to just be taking her somewhere other than Western medicine, because that wasn't working.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was. In fact, I was sitting in a waiting room of this woman I had found in Florida. My Aunt Cecile had a really terrible rash, and if anybody's had a rash, that can make you pretty crazy. And I flew in because she just was at her wit's end and found this woman. And I was sitting in her waiting room looking at different brochures and got interested in this type of allergy elimination technique that she was doing. She was an acupuncturist and an herbalist. And one thing led to another. I mean, it's kind of a circuitous story, but that's really how I got into it initially. And then through following all the yeses is what I like to say, just like, oh yeah, I'll go to this guy who's telling me to he'll be my mentor, and I'll yes to this and yes to that. And that over time has led me here. This is really my second career. Well, maybe even my third, but in the second half of my life, to change things so dramatically towards healthcare was something I didn't think I could do, and has been one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life.
So what was that moment? Did you see, did the rash go away? Did she get better? Like, what was that moment for
It
you in
was
terms of the light bulb moment?
well, like I say, it was circuitous. I read the back of this book, this NAET, Nambudripad Allergy Elimination Technique book. And I read the back, and it said she was doing research in San Diego. And I emailed her and I said, wow, I was looking for something else in my life. And I thought, well, maybe I could volunteer. Sounds so interesting. She's got she's an MD, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist. And she's doing all this research. And I emailed her and said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. Could I come and see it or whatever? And she wrote me back and said, I only work with people who have degrees in healthcare.
Mm.
So I said, all right, well, I'll see you in 4 years, which I didn't know how long it was going to take, but I assumed it was like college. Little did I know it was going to be many years. And my path did not lead me back there. So that was part of it too, is that just following, once I started into Eastern medicine school and went to UCLA for my, the pre-med classes, because I was older. So my college courses didn't transfer. I just got hooked.
I didn't realize you had to go then back to college in terms of UCLA.
Yeah. Good. Well, it depends on the school, but in California, they require you to do a lot of the pre-med. They don't offer that. Well, some of them do, but I wanted the labs, and I just got into it. What can I say?
Which I'll say too, because, obviously I've also have a second career and I went back to school. Going back to school after being out of school for so long,
Ooh,
that takes a moment.
it does.
I remember first studying for my first exam and like, wait, come on, brain, you can do it.
Totally.
It was really difficult.
What's funny is I wasn't a great student in my younger years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. My brain just hadn't developed.
Mm.
And going back, I realized, there are tricks to actually passing. And there are tricks to, what your focus is. And that was really fun for me, because once I understood how to learn, which I guess I had learned over my lifetime of all of my different careers, it was really fulfilling.
Yeah, it was interesting to me to realize you can have different experiences in like years apart in terms of going back to college. But what kept me steady was my love and desire to really want to learn. And it kept me more focused in a way than probably my previous years, even though
Yeah,
it was a bit easier in my previous years because I had been studying. I mean, when you go from kindergarten to, all the way into college, you're so used to the repetition of studying that and then once you get out of it, it's like a habit, right? Where you then have to build it up again. And it also made me realize how much the brain is also just looking at it in that way where, how are you using it?
that's so
In regard to the body, even like working out the body and the muscles, are you, what capacity are you still using it? And so that was eye-opening. So, all right. So then you went to UCLA, and then what made you decide, because you have a specialty in internal medicine and you often now support people dealing with environmental toxins. So how did you get into that? And then how does that lens inform the way you look at like long-term stress, aging, and caregiving?
Oh, that's a big question. Okay, let me take it in parts. I got into this very specialized way of working with herbs through a mentor, Dr. Matt Van Bunschoten. It happened when I was in school. I had asthma, and I kept hearing from all the doctors that I was just going to have to keep taking all these new meds and inhalers and all this stuff. And things just kept getting worse for me. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to, I read all the side effects. I'm in school for this. Why don't I? So I had seen a number of different people. And then I saw the pharmacist, herbal pharmacist in our school, in our Eastern medicine school, Emperor's College, which recently has closed, sadly. But he treated me using this very unique diagnostic technique that was taught to him through Dr. Matt Van Bunschoten. And for the first time, it was like the window opened or the light shone or whatever you want to say, because I felt different after just like 1 or 2 doses of this guy's herbs. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I want to learn more. And I did. And Dr. Matt had a 6-month waiting list. and saw people from all over the world. And I just was pretty hooked and thought, I got to learn what he's doing. I need to study with him. So his form of herbal treatment has to do with a very specialized technique that he developed. But the bottom line is that he looked at both the Eastern and Western side of things, meaning that he took the traditional knowledge, but he then uncovered all these different studies of the different pharmaceuticals that were being used for whatever pathology someone had come to see him for. And it was fascinating to see, like, oh, he's equating this pharmaceutical, this constituent in this herb to what this pharmaceutical does. And then he would find research to back up his theories. And just, just a really superior doctor in every way, and an amazing thinker, and just has stretched the bounds of the way that herbal medicine is used in many ways. And his passion was mold exposure, mercury exposure, things like that. So I got into that too, and I've taken a little further, but yeah, I guess that's how I got into it. And it's such a specific type of work, and yet it just spans every single patient I see, meaning there's always something coming in that's from an external pathogen of some sort. And when we bring that in, a lot of times, as you know, it can be brought on by stress, or your system's weakened by the stress that you're under. And going back to your question, I think that is the number one issue that we all have to deal with in terms of keeping ourselves healthy, is learning how to deal with stress and anxiety, and what's holding us back on a psycho-emotional level that's bringing our human form a little weakened. Or, as you know, because that's the work that you do, on a spiritual level, we really have to get right with the fact that we're in the human body, which is something I've realized over time that you have to help people with, because they want to go so much faster than their human form can go. Yeah. So in terms of aging and caretaking, it's just so important to figure out how you're going to deal with the unending stress that you end up being under as a caretaker.
And I think you're speaking to many aspects that can happen, where not only can you maybe have pathogens or something coming in from the external into the internal, which can be affecting the physical body, but then you may also have some sort of emotional or mental kind of constriction about this, the fear of like the unknown, not feeling well, the stress of it, which is then this like multi-bodied aspect of it. And which I think part of what, I've seen, and we have, clients that we worked together with, and that your approach in terms of being so compassionate and trying to help people walk through it, to be more patient with the process, which yeah, when you're not feeling good, you do want to feel better, and hopefully it's going to be hurry up, but like you're talking about is also the patience of for the body. The body's going through something, and can we allow it then the space? And so I would love for you to just talk more about then, like, you've talked a little bit about it, but how, like, then, I feel like there's just been more of a resurgence of this classical plant wisdom that was somewhat, in some ways, it's been lost, but now it's coming forward even more so. And even more so than with like modern medical understanding, which brings this integrative approach. Like, how have you seen it, in any kind of examples that you can give where you've seen profound like shifts, with people? You mentioned asthma for yourself. Is there anything else that you can like talk to kind of really explain it to people. And also, I just want to say you do personalized herbal aspects for people. It's
Yeah.
not just like one herb.
Right.
It's
Right. Yes.
it's a whole personalized herbs, and oftentimes, it can be like 5 or more that are involved in it, depending on what's going on with the person. And as you go through the process with you, it can be, over an hour in terms of the process of you working with somebody to figure out like, okay, what's going on with their system. And then when you're talking about the patients, where you're then taking the herbs possibly 3 or 4 times a day,
Or
several
more.
heaping fulls of, to make sure that you're receiving them. And I think sometimes that's where people don't have patience for the process. They just sometimes want, can I just take a pill or get a shot and be one and done? But it's also the body's going through something. So back to like my question then is, any other examples about the classical plant wisdom with modern medical understanding for people to really understand this in a grounded, more so way?
Right. Well, first I'll say, just in terms of my work, I have a pharmacy of powdered herbs, making it easier to to use. And you're right. It's I have 400 herbs that I'm choosing from, and it is personalized. I make sure each herb is not only right for what's going on and hopefully treating multiple uh, issues within that one herb, but in relation to another herb in the formula, they have to match. And usually, you're right, it's usually 6 or more. It can be up to even 20. I generally don't do formulas with 20 herbs, but you could. And what's amazing about herbs and what people really miss is that each herb, my mind is already going in a million different directions with what I want to say, but each herb does multiple things, like 5 or more different things. And then when you put them in relation to another herb, it's exponential. Like, they will work together to do things. They will move into an upward movement in the body or downward. They'll treat a low back pain as well as urinary issues. So the herbs themselves will change. And I was having a dream about this just the other night. I woke up dreaming about trying to figure out how herbs know what to do in each body. And I woke up thinking, oh, it's what receptor sites are available to those different constituents. And anyway, that goes down a different rabbit hole. But
One of our favorites, but that might be for another episode.
I mean, the herbs are amazing. And today I got a text from a friend, first off this morning, showing me some herbalists, because there's all types of herbalists. Backyard herbalists are valuable people in your community, and you should know them and go see them and be open to their information. And at the same time, she sent me this Instagram of this woman who had put 2 herbs, I think it was a lonicera, or you might say honeysuckle, and echinacea, into a jar, and was filling it with alcohol. And she was saying, this is antibacterial, and this will cure everything. And my friend wrote, is this woman crazy? And I wrote back, no, because it is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not that simple often. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it is, depends what's going on. So, getting to know an herbalist and working with an herbalist is is something that everybody should.
And I'm just
get
gonna
to
say
years.
I'm just gonna say a legit herbalist, somebody who's really studied and also really respects the wisdom of plants and really takes time, and it's not just about the marketing for likes, just to kind of make that discernment, because you have studied for years and years and years, and you continue to study. You are, just finishing another course, and getting another certification. So it's not like a one and done certification. You're an acupuncturist. You went and studied with, Dr. Matt, who has passed on, just in case anybody asks about like seeing him now. He has passed on, and Ellen is one who continues bringing his work forward and things like that. So yes, somebody who has studied and really knows the wisdom and the art of plants, because like you're saying, in terms of plants like working together, which makes sense in terms of the harmony on earth
Yeah.
too, where we're bodies within a body, and the sacredness of how Mother Earth, in terms of the resources that she's providing, which is the spirituality aspect of it, which even years ago when we first met and started talking about how like we can send Reiki to the herbs and clear anything that was possibly where the herbs were picked. Maybe there was something land disturbance there, and
Yes.
we could release that land disturbance to raise the vibration and working with the guides and things like that. And that's the power then of like really connecting all the story dots and bringing forward of these layered modalities, right?
I love that. And I thank you for reminding me that that was a big tool that you helped me learn how to use, and has really provided a lot of peace, I think, within my work, but also for the herbs. And what's amazing with the way that Dr. Matt and the diagnostic technique, and then how we test the herbs, is that a lot of times certain herbs will work for certain conditions. And when I say work, I mean they're resonant for that person's body. And that leads me, or those of us who work with herbs, if you're listening to the herb is saying, yeah, this is got, I can do antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, and I can also help with this other issue. And then that informs the way I'm looking at what's going on, because I can do a lot of thinking and coming to the table with my experience and my knowledge, but it's really the body that I have to listen to, and the herbs
Was the
help
body
me
of
do
the herb and the body of the
that.
human.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Like
it's just
letting the wisdom speak for itself,
totally.
which
Yeah.
is
And in fact,
remarkable.
I think that when we ourselves are able to really feel into our bodies are communicating with the food that we're choosing. And that first thought, best thought, or am I leaning into this food, or am I saying, oh, I shouldn't? I mean, the moment you say that, probably you shouldn't, but maybe just one bite. Okay. Then you say, okay, yeah, maybe just one bite.
Mhm.
But oftentimes we are not in touch with that, because we don't learn how to be in touch with that.
Mhm.
Nobody's teaching us that. And I was talking to a woman who studies animal behavior in the wild, and she was talking about how interesting it was to watch these herds of animals that would pass over many different grasses to get to this one that was right for what was going on for them at the time.
Mm.
And I think it's innate in us. It's just that we're in our heads instead of in our
In
hearts,
our bodies.
and in our guts,
Mhm. Mhm.
first brain, second brain, right? Heart and gut.
Absolutely. And so I also just want to speak to, I think sometimes there can be a misconception that I have found that, in this particular path that I may then not be into any Western medicine. And I just feel like, you and I can go back and forth in terms of talking about Eastern and Western. And I think it's just something important that we kind of talk about, because I am for any kind of support in terms of healing and helping that's for the highest good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, me too. And it would be frankly foolish to be against something, to be against Western medicine, which is an amazing medicine that has its place. Um, I just am not sure it's really the first place to go, because I remember when Obama was in office and his focus was on preventative care, which is great. And I was excited about that. And we should all be interested in preventative care. However, to me, his preventative care was already one step further than I consider preventative care. He was talking about like mammograms and getting scans and doing labs. And the truth is that if we are really talking about preventative care, we are talking about a day-to-day, how do I feel? What's going on? And dealing with that with somebody who can help you before you need to go get a scan. So I think food is medicine, and herbs are part of that.
I think also that you're bringing up like the perception in terms of some of the broken aspects of healthcare when they're defining preventative care with lab tests and X, Y, and Z. But meanwhile, it begins long before you get to that point,
Yeah,
where you're
thank you.
needing. And I will say, I look at kind of, you know, Western medicine, like I'm like the labs and the testing, like to look directly into the body and to see what's going on. I'm like, yes,
Yes.
please. And then in working with like, what can be beneficial, whether it's Eastern, Western medicine. And with that, then I also just want to bring up when we went into the pandemic some years ago, you brought forward several formulas, herbal formulas. And there was one of them that was like I don't remember what they're called now, but maybe the preventative
Yeah, there was a
COVID
prevention, there was
prevent.
antiviral, there was a
It
few.
was the prevention one. It
Yeah,
was the prevention
I think it was
COVID,
called prevention. Yeah.
prevention COVID herbal formula. And I was like, yes. And I took that. I was so disciplined about taking that I think it was like for the couple years we were in it. And I will say, and of course I'm like knocking on wood. I did not get sick throughout those couple years. I was probably in some ways, like I did not even, I mean, I probably had some allergy things going on just from living in Los Angeles and things like that, which is a whole nother conversation probably.
Yes.
but I really felt like I didn't get, like the flu like I may have, but I really feel like the preventative really helped me maintain and strengthen my immune function. And I also would Reiki the herbs, specifically asking for strengthening of my immune function, at that time. And so it was really, that was really, really helpful. And I just wanted to bring it up and just, have you talk about it in your own experience and then why you felt called to bring it forward too.
Mm. It's funny, to even go back to that because it feels so far away. I actually had a really hard time creating formulas for mass consumption, because my specialty is individualized formulas, and I know that that's the best way for people to really stay well. But when COVID first happened, I couldn't see everyone, and also what I do is takes time and money, and not everybody had that because people were not working. Whole families were home, you know. And I thought, okay, I need to meet this moment, and just felt really called. I came up with all three formulas. You're not allowed to say that it treats anything, and I couldn't put the word COVID on anything. But it really did help people. It
It did.
really
It really
did.
helped
And
me. It really
yeah,
helped
it
me.
helped those who were taking the prevention formula. It really helped them, and those who started to have symptoms. I had an early one, and then I had, the ongoing symptom one, and then I've treated a lot of people with long haul COVID, and that's a whole other thing. So recovery, I think, was one. Yeah. So it's so funny you bring that up because I was just looking at a photo of those, and it just felt like, oh my gosh, how many years ago was that? A lot's happened since then. But yeah, it that was a beautiful moment in time. And now that I'm focusing more on environmental factors, I am starting to develop some other products that I'm excited about and hopefully can get out to more people.
Oh, great. I mean, are you going to do like another formula like you did that for more of the masses, or what is that
Yeah,
going to
I
look
think
like?
so. I think so. It's taken me a lot of time to figure out what's going to be most compatible for the majority of people, and also get through my own bias of needing, I was walking my dog this morning thinking about different formulas, and I was thinking, well, maybe what I could do is have a base formula, and then people could meet me online and I could make it perfect for that. And it was like, oh, come on, Ellen, it's okay. It'll be all right.
It will be. I believe we did a dowsing
I
session,
need to
by
do
the
it
way.
again.
We did a dowsing session for that because
I
I
remember.
was like, yes, you can do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be, because even if it's a mass formula, it's still going to be individualized for the person. I
Yes.
understand what you're saying, but the guides are like, no, it's going to be individualized for the person, because the herbs are going to work with them and the guides are going to work with them. And then if layering in Reiki as well, setting that intention for it to support them in terms of the vibrational aspect that is calling to them too.
Well, and going back to what I said a little earlier, and what I keep learning about is how the herbs really do adjust to the person who needs them.
It's kind of like that cellular communication that they're doing
Totally.
with them.
Oh, it totally is. I cannot wait until we have some, scientific proof. I mean, we have some. We do know certain herbs that literally will either move the blood or stop the blood from flowing, depending on what the person needs. That has been studied, but I'm seeing more and more that all herbs do that. All foods do
The
that.
herbs do not have a marketing campaign like pharmaceuticals do in the United
That's
States.
right. Yeah.
They do not have.
Yeah.
If they had more of a marketing team and a budget behind it, we would probably see different studies coming up. But I've seen studies come out too in
Yeah.
regard to herbs and things like that. So, all right, is there anything else before we go more into the caregiving journey? Is there anything else that you want to share about like your professional path that feels important for listeners to know?
Gosh. I guess in relation to what we're talking about today, caring for yourself, putting yourself first. And in terms of my path, I would just say yes. If you think you can, or if you dream that you can, you can. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I always say that too, if you are in the midst of some sort of career change and
Mhm.
you are feeling overwhelmed or scared or even negating yourself, like, I thought I'd be further along, I thought I'd be this and that. Let yourself take some breaths, use the tools, and just let yourself say yes to what is calling, and give yourself compassion for any kind of past, so that way you can continue moving forward to let yourself learn and grow into the next stage you're moving into.
As always, well said.
Oh, thank you, my friend. All
Yeah.
right, let's so this episode, conversation on aging parents care and what can support you to stay steady, is really about the inner experience we may not often name. It's about what happens inside of us when a parent or a loved one begins to need more support. When our roles may quietly shift, it's about the emotional, energetic weight of caregiving that may come up. And also, what are the resources? It can be so incredibly confusing, overwhelming, especially when you're in systems that are broken or changing, things like that. And so, like, what are the practical, what are the herbal, the energetic, the relational that can help us remain steady while everything around us may be changing so fast? And so, that's why I wanted to have this conversation about love, responsibility, boundaries, grief, sadness, clarity, The unexpected moments, though, also of grace that appears along the way. So, like for me, my mom's journey has only recently begun in this phase of needing 24/7 care. Yet many years ago, like Ellen, she went through this with her own mother. And so I just feel like it's important to have this conversation and just share tools that, that we each used or using and things like that. So Ellen, if you feel comfortable and it feels aligned, could you talk a little bit about your mom, what that chapter was like for you and when she was moving into her later years?
Yeah, absolutely. My mother, Gloria, was a real force. So she was very self-determined, and that is an amazing thing until you try to move someone like that. So in every metaphor you can imagine about trying to get somebody to move. And luckily for her and for me, um, she was set up in a situation where she lived in the condo where I had been raised. So she was there over 40, 50 years. And it was a 300 unit building in Dallas. And so everybody knew her. And she was pretty safe there. She couldn't necessarily, she wanted to drive, and I stupidly agreed to get her another car, which through the beauty of the way that the universe works, that car never was able to really start. I bought a lemon. And we paid all this money
Wow.
for this car, and it mostly wouldn't start. So
The guys are like, we're just going to take care of you
yeah,
right now
exactly.
and
But
not
not
let this
everybody
work.
gets that lucky. I mean, it was
And then
really,
when you sold it, the person was able to start it right away. Oh, no, just
it
kidding.
was crazy. I mean, it was really an electrical confusion. I mean, I can't tell you, every time I went to Dallas, I took it in, and they said, oh, they fixed it again. And then we'd bring it home and it wouldn't start. So that worked out pretty well for me. But taking the car away is a big deal. And of course, nowadays there are lots of options, but most people aging are still not into those options. They don't know how to use their smartphones. And my mother never had one of those anyway. It was long before that.
My
But
mom didn't either. So,
yeah, and
yeah.
it gets confusing, and they're always
Yeah.
upgrading into something that you don't even can't even figure out how to use half the time. So she was in her home for many years, and I increased care over time. And of course, that was quite an expensive thing to go through. I looked for since I wasn't in Dallas, I was looking for care managers. I worked with initially someone who helped me interview caregivers through different organizations or companies. And in the end, because our system is pretty messed up, and because our system is really based about profits, even that care manager turned out to be somebody that I had to let go.
Mm.
And in the end, sadly, but it is true, I've always thought you get what you pay for. So her care went from, and unfortunately, those companies that provide caregivers to people, they don't pay them what you're paying into them, right? They're paying people, depending on the state, somewhere between $8 and $15. And that's
And
somebody who
it's not
really,
easy work either.
hard work.
I mean, it's hard work.
And my mother, I really cared about the food she was eating. So I wanted somebody who was going to be able to cook and take care of her and really cook good food. At one point, my mother called me and said, this woman is feeding me wet, hot tuna. and I said, what are you talking about? It must be, a tuna casserole or something. She said, no, it's wet, hot tuna.
She
It's
was just
horrible.
taking tuna from a can and warming it
And
up.
sticking it on some noodles.
Oh, man.
But, I would say, and I made some notes about what I might want to, the tips that I went through and remember, but that I'll just say this one now, which is um, one thing that I regret, or one thing that was a mistake on my part, is that as my mother's memory was going, because she had dementia, I didn't always respect the story she was telling me. Like I didn't, because it was confusing, had some paranoia in it, I just dismissed it. And I would really caution, I mean, I learned over time that I needed to filter it out and kind of parse out what might be true, because there always was some truth to what she was saying, sometimes more than others. And that's one thing I really learned, is to really listen to what they're saying, even when they're telling you something that seems so upside down and totally different. You were there, and your reality is so different, but keep listening, because there is something there that is true for them. Anyway, my mother, it was a long 10-year process of increased care for her.
How old was she when she started moving through this?
She was 85 when it started. So she was 5 years in Dallas without being in a facility. And with me, I was still finishing some school at the time. So
You were in Los Angeles? Were you going
I've
to
been in Los
UCLA?
Angeles, yeah.
Were you in UCLA or
I
Emperor's College by
I
then?
was in Emperor's College, and I actually crossed over taking both at one time, because it's just a pre-med at UCLA. So it's, you can take classes here or there to catch up on everything. But yeah, so I then moved her out.
What was the moment that you decided that she needed to be moved out, and how was she in terms of being so self-determined? Because my mother also very self-determined.
It is such a dance, isn't it? It really is. I mean, you want to respect their autonomy. You want to respect what they're going through, which is very difficult. It's a very, very difficult time when you're watching someone lose their memory. And the worst part is they know it.
And also, too, though, their safety significantly comes into play that they may not be aware of.
Or
That they may be
they're in denial.
They may be
They don't want to
unsafe.
tell you. They often will hide it.
Well, 'cause of being scared and things like that. It's a very complicated time, and then also our systems in the US don't really set us up for, like, that success of, like, when it's time to move them in, because all these things that, if you're moved into the nursing home at a certain point, then you can be moved into like memory care. Or if you're just moved into memory care, it can cost more than if they just move from a nursing home to memory care.
Right.
And then in terms of like the systems that will pay for it, if they're too far over here going to memory care, you might end up having to pay more for private as opposed to if they had moved there sooner in terms of nursing home. It's so complicated.
It is complicated.
And then when you have somebody that you're respecting, you want to respect their autonomy and their independence. And then at the same time, like, okay, we need to get you to safety and support and help. So that way you're going to be okay. But also, how are we going to financially do this?
Yeah, it's very complex.
It's very complicated, and so then you are, in terms of being an only child. I do have, two brothers that we can talk about it, and, but every sibling is going through something different. Where for me, dowsing really helped, because asking Reiki to be sent and then doing dowsing clearings. But for you, like, how did you maneuver through it? And what was that moment in terms of you recognizing, it's time to move my mom? And then how did you work with your mom on that?
Yeah, it was a long period of time where we talked a lot about it. And ultimately, my mother, she really didn't want to burden me, which I think is a common thing that you hear from parents. And ultimately, I was able to start talking to her about what a heavy burden it was in my heart and in my life to have her far away. And how much better it would be for both of us for her to be closer and to have more care. And I remember uh, when I moved her, she had finally come around to the idea that she was going to be closer to me. And I remember I wrote it down, the date, and I stuck it on a post-it, like, my mother finally said she was going to come to California and be near her daughter to someone. But it is so individual, and it's so difficult, as you say, and it is incredibly expensive. And navigating what they can qualify for, whether they have long-term care or if they don't. And so many of the long-term care policies now don't cover a lot. There are these hidden, well, hopefully you read it well enough, but it used to be that you could have a long-term care policy that would cover you, but only if you were in a facility. And now the policies have realized, like, oh, it'll benefit you it won't cost us as much if you just have somebody at your home. So there are different policies that people can look at, but they are all expensive. So I don't know. It's just
It's so complicated.
And the other thing that is a really good thing to look into is a special needs lawyer, which can cost up front, but they can help you set up a trust that will that you can use through Medicare or Medicaid, depending on the state. And obviously, once you set up a special needs trust, anything in the trust must be used for the patient or the person. Nobody else can use that money, which is often really smart, because elderly people can be taken advantage of. And you being whoever's listening, may want to look into going ahead and putting the house in a child's name, but you have to do that a certain amount of years before they have the need for it.
But even with that, though, you can end up getting, from what I don't know all the particulars, but you can end up getting more tax than if it's in a trust.
That's true.
And so
decide what's best for each family, but it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, it's definitely worth looking into. And then also all these resources that you possibly can get, obviously, like, Medicaid, Medicare, but then all of them, they just have different components that you have to understand about how, and there's all the paperwork you have to fill out too, making sure that you have the paperwork done. And then there's other resources too that you can possibly get, but that takes time to, navigate and research, as opposed to all of a sudden it happening and you being like, oh my God, now I got to catch up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like walking this path, like my mom she's just been in really great health. She's, 89 years old and has just been so cognitively there. And so now walking this path and having a parent move into, she has been in her elder years, but it's like all of a sudden in a blink of an eye, she's really in need of elder care in a split second, it seems. And when you're navigating this like fragmented system, at times it can just feel very like overwhelming, because you're just inside several realities at once and you're trying to understand. I mean, it's so complicated. You're trying to understand what's needed, what's possible, while wanting your loved one to receive, this care, the safety, the dignity they deserve. And with it, it's like the broken system, the weight of the loved one moving into what is possibly also their last chapter of life.
Yeah.
Like that can feel immense at times. And so for me, like what has steadied me is having these tools that have kept me anchored when these changes have been happening quickly. And so that part of that is I've done it for years, and I've done it also for clients. But this is really the first time I've really done it for my family and I, where I've been doing this elder care dowsing and Reiki sends for my mom and the systems. And it has been so interesting, like having the clarity come through, the unexpected support, and what feels like miracles at times. Like
Mm.
it's helped me also recenter again and again as like these difficult changes have been happening and unfolding like really rapidly, more so than like my human self may have anticipated, even though the guides shared with me back in June 2025 that one of my mom's beginning of her last chapter would potentially be a timeline that was about 6 months from June. And I saw the signs of it in, in the month before things really started happening in November 2025. But I don't know. It's like when you're seeing it, it's kind of like you said before, it's kind of like it's slow motion, it's happening. But, and I was telling my brothers, like, I think she's starting her memory is starting to seems to dissipate, but it just didn't really seem like real, and then all of a sudden it just like sped up, and watching her move from being cognitively present to suddenly all of a sudden having just major signs of dementia, like they're surfacing at stage 2 or 3 pace now, so the speed is just so like disorienting at times. And so with my human, it can feel like the ground is moving under my feet faster than my mind can track. And then my mom, you're also processing your experience with your parent, with your mom, with your loved one. And like you said, with your mom, she was really self determined. My mom, very self determined. And she always has been very strong, sharp minded. And none of us could have imagined that this would be part of her path. And yet, at nearly 90 years old, one day she's fully there. And then the next day, she's speaking to my brothers and I as if we're still on vacation from school. Like we just came back from college and we're all living at home, and like my dad is still alive. And so you're processing how to navigate a loved one in this really complicated system and changes. And then you also have these like emotional whiplashes that is so hard to put into words. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. And then, what's been helping me is doing, obviously talking to friends, dear friends like you for the, what you went through and how to navigate, but then also doing meditation, but really doing Reiki and dowsing energy work, because connecting to the light truth, helping me process grief without collapsing into it,
Mm.
opening pathways of support for my mom that I never would have known existed. Like it's helped me stay more present. And I'll give you an example. This has happened so fast for my family and I, where my mom, she all of a sudden she had to go to the hospital. And like I mentioned, her place is still decorated for Christmas. So that tells you like where we are in the timeline. It's now February, her place is still decorated for Christmas. We thought she was going to be coming home, and she went into the hospital. And then next thing they know, they're telling us, she's got to go into short-term care and rehab to be able to strengthen before she's able to go home, because she's at a safety risk. She's not able to, really walk much. She needs help going to the bathroom. She needs, and so also worrying about, being concerned about her being able to remember to like feed herself, things like that. Or if she was cooking, the concern of, just things like that, what that means. And so it was like so quick. And then she went from being in the hospital to being sent to this short-term rehab facility. And they all of a sudden were telling us like, oh, she needs 24/7 care. And we're not going to be able to release her if you don't have some sort of like a plan in place. And it's so like, wait, what? And it's like, where do you go? And like that's it. Like you have this meeting with these people and they tell you, well, you need to have this care in place. And it's like 15 to $20,000 like a month. And you're like, wait, you want the person that you love to get what they need, and you want them to be safe. You want them to have, the dignity and still the autonomy of like what they want. And so for the last like, couple years, my oldest brother, has been asking my mom to move with him and his family. And, it's been like, yeah, 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 yeah. But she hasn't wanted to leave where she lives. And my brothers and I all live out of state. And so it's really, she does not want to leave an area that she grew up in, that she loves. And that's also an obstacle and a hurdle because you're like, you want to respect, but then also, so she didn't move. And now you're in this situation. And it was so scary because you're just like, okay, she can't get home. She can't go home by herself. They won't release her. And she's not safe to be home by herself. So we need to get her the care in place. And then you're just in this situation with the family and, it can be very overwhelming. And so you're trying to workshop the problem. And so for me, I was like, wow, okay, let me just do elder care dowsing and asking the guides, like, okay, we need like a miracle because also my brothers and I are all processing loss and grief differently.
Yeah.
And so how do you make like these big decisions about someone else's life when you're kind of in like shock of like, holy moly, this just happened so incredibly fast. It wasn't like years in the making. It was, she was there one moment and the next minute she's like talking to me as if I got home from college and I'm on vacation. And or she's asking about my dad who she thinks is alive and he passed away 6 years ago. And so it's like, wow. And so anyway, I've done many elder care dowsings now. And one of them I did was I just asked the guides, I was like, we need help, like stat. We need like emergency services help. I don't know how this is going to happen, but she was supposed to be let go. She was supposed to be, her ending date of this short-term rehab facility was coming to an end. And they had said to us, you need to do X, Y, and Z. This is like the out date. And you also need to show that she has all these things in place. And so I did a huge dowsing and I asked the guys like, we need emergency services. We need help. And so then what ends up happening was, she had a situation at the short-term facility that sent her back to the hospital, which nothing ended up being the matter when she went to the hospital. That being said, though, the system reset itself. And so when she went back to the hospital and I called the short-term care facility, I just said, what is going to happen next? Is she coming back to you? And so then this is where the miracle came in. I was then told basically the system reset. And she said, call the hospital, talk to, they have a care manager, and ask for a long-term facility.
Yeah.
Because she had been sent to a short-term facility, it was short-term. And so they said, ask for a long-term facility and ask for these things.
Often a good idea anyway.
Yeah. And so, that was like that was one of the many miracles that has happened. And so through that, then we asked for that. And then now she's in a long-term care facility, but still short-term care, if you will. But now from there, she's now in this place though. She's now can move into the nursing home part of it.
Right.
Because she's already in the system of it. But I had to do another massive like elder care dowsing even for that because, it's like the like that, I don't know if there's going to be space, or what's going to happen here, or blah, 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 or is that final paperwork here and there? It's like all these things, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So in my dowsing, I've just been asking to clear any kind of anything that's blocking the ability to shift into what she needs for the highest good, asking, for any kind of miracles, things like that. And so, for me, these tools have just been really, invaluable in helping a lot of different ways. But I would love to know for you, like as you were moving through it, like what tools, did you use? Were you going through acupuncture, or were you going through herbs? Like what did you do? I know you do meditation too and things like that, but what worked for you and helped you as you kind of look back and think about it?
Right. Well, I want to go back before I answer that just briefly and say that was a miracle that she ended up going back to the hospital. Those moments when they're pushing you to have a plan in place feels like they're doing something that is, or they're trying to get rid of her or whatever. That is like the best thing that can happen. And like I said briefly, getting someone into a long-term facility rather than a short-term one is often better care, even if they're only going to be there for a short period of time. The other thing I would say is if you're able to be in the same city as your loved one who happens to be in care or in the hospital, running around, and I've done this, I did this for a few people, to look at facilities if you don't know them. And a lot of them, since COVID, they won't let you in. So you have to make an appointment and you really don't get the full picture. So sometimes I would say, like, after I left there, I'd call them and say, oh, I left my glasses. So I'd get back in really quickly to look around while they didn't know, they weren't escorting me. Little tricks like that were really helpful to get a vibe for what's really going on in those places. If you can look around and you know where you want to go, or you call around to enough care managers and ask people who really will tell you, because legally they're not allowed to say we prefer this place over another. But now with all the online ratings, you can see what people are actually experiencing and saying. And of course, it's always going to be mixed, but you'll find the place you want to go, and then go back and talk to the social worker / care manager at the hospital, get them on your side and see if you can navigate your loved one into the place that would be best for you and your
Hmm.
family. And a lot of times the hospital will start to say, it's time to leave. You've got to go, da, da, da. And if all you have to say, if you're not ready, you can just say they don't have the care on the other end.
Hmm.
Now, sometimes that's going to kick off some out of pocket expenses. You need to check that before, but sometimes it's really worth it. If you need one more night or one more day, figure out what that is within your state, and then push them to say, like, you can't just send her here or there because that's not appropriate for her or us.
Hmm.
And you really have to get them on your side to have the doctor / social worker make those decisions on your behalf and really work. You have to stay on them because they're working for a lot of different people, but really work um, for your best interest to get your loved one into the place where you feel that would be best for them. What I did, okay. Well, one thing I wouldn't recommend that I did is I got a puppy. I was
You
so
got an emotional support animal.
I did. I got a puppy, and he was the absolute joy of my life. And it was, I mean, I had more than one person living at my home, so I wasn't not the only person caring for the puppy, but it was a big joy at a time when I just needed grounding. And that was really important for me, to have that kind of unconditional love and also have a responsibility that I had to focus on when I wasn't with my mother, or my cousin, or my godmother, or whoever else I've been helping. But that I don't necessarily recommend that. But it really did help me. Meditation was a huge part of what I went through, and having those skills even at the moment that you're at a doctor's appointment, you're in the waiting room, if you can get yourself centered, and Henry has taught me a lot about how to do that in other ways too. If you can do that, then you can really be there for yourself, and you can access the information that your body's giving you as to, is this the right place? Is this the right person? Is what this person telling me benefit to my family, or is this because they are really trying to make money? And there's so many places in the experience, from the care place they're going to send them, the short term, getting them out of the hospital, care managers, all the way to hospice. People don't realize, I mean, number one, people are afraid of using hospice because they see the word hospice and they think that equals death, but it really doesn't. And more people need to embrace hospice, or at least look into it, because that kind of care takes a lot of the financial weight off of the experience. And depending on the state, there are different hospice rules per state. So you don't know how long somebody's allowed to be in hospice, but they can also leave hospice. Like once hospice
Mhm.
starts, they will be in that, and you'll hear like, oh, well, after that, we're not going to send them to the hospital. But that's not always true. And
Mhm.
the moment you get sent back to the hospital, if you choose to do that, then hospice will stop, and you'll decide what the next steps are for your family. But there are so many moments, like a hospital choosing a hospice. You'll be in the hospital and you will get a call from the hospice that the hospital has chosen for you.
Mhm.
Well, that's a moneymaker. And you have the right to choose whatever hospice company you want to choose. And there are so many different suggestions and places and research, but when you're going through it, there's no time.
I know it goes so fast, like it's so quick, which I will say though, when you were talking about just, taking time to talk to the care manager or social worker and developing the relationships and letting them know, what your family, what not only your loved one could possibly need, but also your entire family and working with you, it can really bridge the gap and help you move in a more graceful way through the system because they know what's available and what's there. And like when I talked to once she went back to the hospital and I had talked to the short-term care manager, and she said, "This is what you have to do: call the hospital, talk to the care manager who's on duty there, the social worker, and ask and just tell them what you need, and this is what you need to say that you need." And so I did it, and it was a Saturday, and that person just happened to be coming into the office, and they said, at first they were kind of like, I'm not going to be able to really do much, blah, blah, blah. But the more that I just shared and just, I could tell that they then were like opening up. And by the end, they had said, I'm not my mom's, my brother is the one who's in charge of her
Oh,
medical.
yeah. Mhm.
And so they said, have your brother call me today if he can. So that way, we can start the conversations. And I had already, just learned from the prior experience, like, okay, we kind of got to be on top of this. And this is the opening moment that essentially, the guides are working with us on. And you have to know when to take that moment. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
about like sitting back and being like, poof, it's
Well,
just gonna happen.
right.
No, like
I
I did
want
the
to also
dowsing, the
add,
guides provided an opportunity, and I needed to step up to the plate to take that opportunity. People, it doesn't just like we're in physical form.
right,
We're the
right.
ones who need to make the call.
You exactly right. And I want to say that just because you've spoken to one social worker, one care manager at the hospital, tomorrow there likely will be a different person in that
Yep.
seat. So you need to stay on top of that too.
Yeah, and so definitely learned that, and just being, uh just obviously too, like, the you and I took mindful communication courses for years and just really utilizing the mindfulness communication and recognizing, that they're working within the system too, and we all know that it's broken, and just to have mindfulness in terms of like showing up and working with people. And I'll also say too, on one of the better things on social media has been, for me, hearing people's experiences, especially nurses, talking about their experiences and how valuable, just everyone who's working within the system, but really nurses who are tending to your loved one. And there's one nurse on social media, Jen Hamilton, and I think that listening to her content, I already was aware and had compassion towards, just healthcare workers, but her content has really made me even more so, in approaching this, to be double my effort, to just having grounded conversations and being really respectful and grateful that, they're able to take care of my mom in a way that I just don't have the capacity. Like, it's not within, there's a lot of things in my wheelhouse. Like, it is not in my wheelhouse, like some of the things that they've had to do in going through this experience, that I just am like, just bless these people for giving my mom the care that she needs at this time.
Definitely, definitely not an easy job, and as I said before, often very low paying. I mean, some of these nurses do get paid, but it's such a grueling job.
Yeah, I mean, they're right. My mom's at the point now where it's like she needs two people to help her to go to the bathroom. Where they even said, like, even if you were home alone with her, one person, if she falls, isn't enough to pick up the weight to help her get up. You need two people at this time. And so that's like wow. It's really, so yeah, so that's why I thought it was really important to like have this conversation, because I just think that, I don't know, I think that I know that it can be really scary to talk about, and there just can be a lot of things that come up, but in terms of just being better prepared as like individuals and family members, like conversations of, you know of like, how, what is it that you want, how can we move forward in a way that, we have some sort of plans in place, and not be afraid of, these really difficult conversations, because when it does happen, it happens like fast, as you said, and we've just been talking about. And so, having, as a former producer, and you also did producing, having some sort of, I look at it as like pre-production, having some sort of like pre-production plan that, may or may not, you at least have some sort of points there that can help you in the moment navigate the terrain, a little better.
Yeah, there's so many conversations that we're afraid to have, and we don't want to face the fact. Most people don't want to say, like, okay, at some point I'm going to die, or you're going to die. And I think that's something that we all need to work on. And there is an online, I mean, there are so many wonderful people who are getting into all sorts of support for this time. Death doulas are all over the country now. You can look on the National Association, and here in Los Angeles, Alua Arthur is an amazing person even to talk to. Even if you're going through something here and your loved one is somewhere else, you can. There's so many ways that you can facilitate these things. But I would say there's an online resource that everyone should do. It's called
Mm.
fivewishes.org. And it's more than a DNR. Everybody, I mean, people like, oh, did you sign your DNR? That's just a simple, like, do you want to be resuscitated? It's what we're all moving into is so much more complex than that. And being able to have those conversations, talk about how you want to be remembered. I mean, that is an important conversation and will open up so many avenues towards really talking about real things with those you love. And they might not be easy conversations, but they're so important because I remember going through and I used to have this at my clinic here in Los Angeles. I would have a gathering of this conversation about dying, about priorities, about what you want. And you would be let me put it another way. How do you want people to treat you? Probably you don't know what your mom would say. I mean, we all think like, oh, well, we want this or that. But what about, like, for me, just so everyone knows, I really want to keep my feet warm. That's important to me. I don't like being cold. And so these things you can talk about, you can write it down. And what a joy for a child or a loved one to have the map. These are things I can do that my loved one wants. And at least I can do these things. I can cover her feet. And simple things like that are in the 5wishes.org. And
I
you can
love
go through
that.
them.
I love that.
Really recommend it for everyone. And I don't care what age you are. You need to do it as a family. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, any of us. But as a parent ages, we do know that if we're lucky enough to see them age, we need to know what we're going to do. And we need to know how they would like to be treated. And I would also say, we also want to revisit these conversations because things change. All of a sudden, you think that you think you're not going to want Western medicine, and then you want it. When the time comes, you need pain management. You want to have antibiotics. That would be crazy, but maybe at the time that you wrote it, you have these idealized thoughts about like, oh, I just want to walk out into the woods and die. But in the end, when it really comes down to it, you have different values that you don't know you have until
You've gone through different experiences with your human body.
You just don't know. And so revisiting those things are really important.
Absolutely. I'll also say something that you mentioned then in regard to that is, the short-term place versus where my mom is now, the food. And even though I may want my mom to have certain foods, my mom loves a hot dog and she loves baked beans.
Oh.
And so like we were we group called my mom and she told us what she was, she ate, and she's like, oh, I had some, baked beans and a hot dog, and all of us were like, yay. She
awesome.
had a meal that she loves.
That's amazing.
I know. And then one of my brothers was visiting her and he sent a picture. I think she had was it like chicken pot pie or something? And we're like, yay, it's something that like things that she would normally make at home. That's great. We want her to have like the foods that she would have had at home. And that makes her feel comfortable. And also too, the other thing for my mom that's been really important for us is, especially when football season was happening, her being able to watch the Patriots.
Oh.
And she is an enormous Patriots fan. And so making sure that she could see the games, the Super Bowl, and, even calling like the day of and just like, okay, her TV needs to be on. She needs to know that it's time for the Super Bowl because she's now going through dementia. So she may have moments of forgetting. But the thing that she doesn't forget, though, that makes her come alive is you ask her anything about the Patriots and she's like, she can tell you stats on them.
That is great.
So yeah, I mean, I totally think like what you're saying is so important in terms of like, what are the important things for your loved one for them to have. And as we're going to be wrapping up now, though, I just love to just talk about like some aspects that you saw that were incredible. Like I'll give you an example. Like my mom, now that she's moving through this experience, in some ways, like she's going through these memories, but the guys call them, though, it's kind of like she's cycling into times of her life when um that were just these real amazing moments of kind of like love for her and things like that. And so I've been able to can be in these conversations with her, which in some ways have just been so much lighter in for us in our relationship,
Mm.
and has been um in some ways I feel closer to my mom than I have in like some years, because my mom just, she's just had a really challenging relationship with just with in terms of anxiety and stress and things like that, that often could cultivate just really difficult hardship in her own present experience. And so now in this experience, what has just been so eye-opening and just so beautiful is to have this different experience with my mom, where as someone who's highly sensitive, that I could just feel this lightness and this just be in this care for her and this love, even if she's moving through talking about a memory from when I was in my 20s. Like there's a different quality of our relationship, and I don't really know how to describe it, but I just feel it feels really just different and powerful and spiritual and beautiful, and just like almost like angelic. I don't know. It's really been incredible in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, I would
And
say I had a similar experience. Uh, One thing I remember really struggling with the idea that my mother is gone, and it wasn't until something dawned on me. Probably someone close to me said, "But your mom is right here. She's not gone." And that really changed things for me, because I thought, wow, I really want to embrace what is happening, not what I wish was happening or some other moment that I, want to relive, or anger that I need to work out or whatever. I just was like, okay, I need to be right here with my mom. And this is my mom. And every day I would go and say, like, well, who is she today? Like, what's going to happen today? And from one moment to the next, we could relive over and over this joy or sadness, and how to move out of that into something that's more positive to help her. um, it was just it was a real practice in presence and in appreciating those aspects of her that came forward, and others that dropped away, that were in some ways got in between us in our relationship, or values, desires, religious ideas that she would have that were different than mine. And those things we might have conflict about, those fell away. And so I was able to keep redirecting our relationship into where we could really enjoy loving one another and just being together. And that was so special for both of us, and really healed a big part of my relationship with my mom.
that is so beautifully said. And I think that you just put to words what I am like, what is it? And one of the last questions I really had was what have you learned about love through witnessing your parent age? And I think that you just really summed it up. And is there anything else like you would add to that in regarding it?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's such a special. I mean, our parents or people who are in different types of healthcare issues or crises or memory loss or pain, they're all going to respond differently. And each day, each moment is going to be different as well. You don't know what to expect a lot of the time. And if you can find the joy in it, if you can turn it around. I remember taking my mother to the dentist once, and she urinated in both her shoes. It was like
Mm.
such a terrible moment for her. And she had so much shame. Of course, I had my bag of everything ready just in case. And so I was able to clean things up and take her to the bathroom and try to redirect her towards just like, oh, Mom, it was just, funny in a way. Like, oh, let's just, who would have thought I would have an extra pair of shoes here for you,
Mm.
like, or whatever. And I just kept doing that. And in my doing that, I'm not saying deny your tears, because you will grieve the whole process and then beyond. But to look back on my time with my mom and think about how I was able to really react moments where she was stressing out, or offer her meds. A lot of people say like, oh, I don't want to be sedated, or sometimes that's important. It's too stressful for them. They're in a lot of grief and in ways that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So just being present to what their needs are and being able to serve my mom, who had, I'm getting emotional, spent her life serving me. And we didn't have an easy relationship, but towards the end, we really healed what was between us, because I felt like I got to love her in a really unconditional manner. And I don't think she ever had loved me that way. And it was really healing for me to be able to do that.
Thank you for sharing. I will say, I've had a really challenging experience with my mom at times too. And I think that me not giving up on my relationship with my mom
Yes.
and being able to get to this point now
Yeah.
has like just been so worth this moment in time in terms of the healing, because I never thought I'd be able to have some of the lightness in the conversations with my mom. And it's just, I don't know. And that to me is like, wow. I don't know. I've learned so much through this time in about myself, relationships, energy, things that I didn't even expect to realize, and about love and just the possibility, and just not giving up, and
Yeah.
not knowing, not having any expectations either. Maybe it's always going to be in terms of the as is. And then all of a sudden that shift, like you said, in regard to just the beauty of it.
Yeah. If you can get there, it's not easy.
It is not, yeah. That's where tools come in. And I'll just say too, I did have the honor of meeting your mom.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Henry showed up. My mother was in her last days. The hospice said it was going to be maybe a week, maybe a few days. And I could tell my mother was really struggling. And I called Henry and I said, I feel like she needs help that I can't give her. And Henry showed up with some stones, and
We did a Reiki session for her right in the room.
beautiful Reiki
Yeah.
session. And afterwards, Henry told me that that my mom was having a hard time letting go, that she didn't feel like she was done. Do you remember? I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember, because I know you've helped a lot of people. But um, after that, after Henry left, my mom calmed down and her breathing changed. And after that, it was like, I don't know, it was just, she was free. And it took a couple more days, but not long.
Yeah. I did a dowsing, I
That was
think, like the
beautiful.
day after.
I'm so grateful to you.
Yeah, to support, and that's just been really powerful too, just in terms of working with the guides and asking them permission from their souls and working with their humans, and just really understanding that kind of, aspect of dowsing with life, and it's just been really powerful and beautiful because um just all the gifts and the miracles that come with it. Like, I think even you said when your mom, after the Reiki session, your mom, her breath changed, but then she became more in clarity too,
Yes.
where you were able to have, some moments with your mom in
Yes,
regard
that's
to the
right.
clarity.
Yeah.
And that's just, I've seen that. I've done that a few times now, and it's just such an honor, and it's just so incredibly beautiful to have families be able to experience that. And it's just really beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for letting me be part of that.
Oh, incredible. And there are so many groups and organizations that do provide, like there, I know this one woman, Teresa Schroeder, who plays harp music for your
Mm,
loved one who's passing. I mean, there's so
beautiful.
many people out there. So just it's important because they're angels on the planet all over.
All over, including you, my friend.
Well, including you is what I was thinking, but
Oh, thank you. Well, all right, we're going to say goodbye to everyone now. And I just would also want to say, if you're walking this path with a parent or a loved one, and just know you aren't alone. As we've been talking about resources and tools, and Ellen has been mentioning things, and there's so many things that you can do to support. And just know that every journey looks different, but the tenderness, the complexity, the love, these are all shared human threads. So if today does bring grief, be gentle with yourself. If today brings clarity, let it land softly. If today brings exhaustion, let yourself rest. And if you feel called to explore tools like Reiki dowsing, meditation, or grounding practices to support you through this chapter, you are welcome to visit. I have Inspiring You Patreon, where there's resources to walk with you. I'll add the link in the show notes. Or if you feel like you want personalized herbs, or if you're in the Los Angeles area and want to do acupuncture, that might support you. Ellen, where can people find you and learn more about your offerings?
yeah, people can only find me one place, and that's on my website, truepathwellness.net, truepathwellness.net. And
Great.
I just want to wish everyone as much compassion for yourself as you can bring. And please take care of yourself as a caregiver. Seek help. There are therapists who specialize in caregivers, and it's very important. If you can't be there for yourself, you can't be there for your loved one.
Absolutely. So, with that, my friends, I will put Ellen's link in the show notes as well. And as you move into the rest of your day, may you and your heart feel held. May your nervous system find steadiness. May clarity come in the moments you need it most. And may you receive the support, human, energetic, whatever you need for your highest good, that helps you walk this path with grace, light, truth, and care. And Ellen, thank you so much for having this conversation with me
Oh,
and
thank you.
sharing. Much, much love. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for your loved ones, and for the unfolding journey of your life. Thank you, everyone.